The young soldiers climbed over the pristine steel of their newly issued Panther. They slid down through the narrow hatches, proudly taking their positions behind massive 80mm sloped frontal plates. Safety felt guaranteed. The heavy metal hatch swung shut with a dull clank. That single mechanical strike severed the men from the outside world entirely. Modern video games and cinema often glorify this predator as an unstoppable steel beast. Reality offered a much darker truth. During World War II, relentless propaganda promised Panther crews total invulnerability across the burning continent. But for many operators, this revered armor simply became a mass grave. German command introduced the heavy vehicle in 1943 to shatter advancing Soviet formations. Yet, operating the most advanced technology meant nothing when rushed engineering ignored basic human survival. As the global conflict dragged on, the survival rates of German tankers dropped precipitously. Welding thicker metal onto the hull completely failed to protect the flesh and blood trapped inside. The primary threat to these young soldiers rarely materialized from the blazing barrels of enemy artillery. Mechanical breakdowns and internal fires within the tank itself directly caused the highest number of crew fatalities. The order to send this raw metal to the front came directly from Adolf Hitler. Panic over new Soviet armor dictated the timeline. What did this rush cost? The engineering process simply collapsed. The true price fell on the men sitting behind the control levers. The shock came from the east. The appearance of the T-34 and the KV-1 shattered German confidence. These enemy machines effortlessly outclassed the aging Panzer II, III, and IV. Berlin needed a countermeasure. Command envisioned the Panther as that exact answer, equipping it with a lethal 75mm gun. By sheer mass, the vehicle matched the Soviet IS-2 heavy tank. Yet leaders insisted on calling it a medium tank. Political demands crushed the development cycle. Creating the heavy Tiger I took over a year of rigorous trials. The Panther project received only a few frantic months. Hitler demanded a fleet of new vehicles for the massive clash at Kursk. Factory bosses ignored fundamental mechanical trials. Time ran out. Draftsmen took the unfinished blueprints and pushed them directly onto the factory assembly line. The blueprints became steel. But the first victims of this frantic rush did not fall in combat. They burned on the railway platforms long before Operation Citadel even began. High Command demanded a miracle. They wanted a flawless medium tank to replace the aging Panzer IV. They ignored the math. The cost of losing a single Panther equaled the production of almost 2 proven Panzer IVs. A massive gamble. The bill came due immediately, July 1943. Heavy freight trains rolled into the staging areas for the upcoming Battle of Kursk. Unloading commenced. Drivers carefully coaxed the untested 45-ton beasts down the steep ramps. Engines whined under the immense strain. Then, a dull pop echoed from the rear armor. Flames erupted from the engine compartment right on the tracks. The acrid stench of burning gasoline instantly mixed with the heavy coal dust of the station. Fire devoured the complex mechanics. It spread in seconds. Crew members scrambled out, helpless. They could only watch their technological marvel consume itself. The ultimate weapon was a self-igniting trap. No enemy artillery was needed. Before the men fired a single shot, the ashes on the gravel belonged to exactly 2 completely incinerated machines. How do you survive inside a steel box that actively tries to burn you alive? The tankers did not know the answer. Unburned fuel pooled inside the red-hot exhaust system and triggered the infernos. The Panther utilized a massive Maybach engine, a mechanical beast. But the combustion cycle failed. Raw gasoline bypassed the cylinders. It flowed directly into the blistering pipes. Then it detonated. Sparks showered the internal electrical wiring. Flames licked the engine compartment bulkheads. If the driver missed the first acrid smoke warning, the fire spread instantly, turning the advanced machine into a furnace. 5 crew members sat trapped inside the fighting compartment. High explosive shells surrounded them. Hundreds of liters of volatile gas sat below. They burned before anyone could unseal the heavy iron hatches. Even if the men contained the internal blaze, the tank still betrayed them. Bright flashes of fire erupted from the exhaust pipes. The brilliant glow cut through the pitch-black night for kilometers around. The flames gave them away. The flames were merely a symptom of a deeper failure. While mechanics struggled to tame the volatile 700-horsepower engine, command stripped the crews of their only lifeline. No manuals, no notes. Inside the stifling hull, a rookie driver stared at the dials. Needles climbed dangerously into the red zone. He desperately tried to recall the emergency shutdown sequence. His sweaty hands gripped the levers. His mind went totally blank. The deafening roar of the overheating motor vibrated violently through the steel floor. It rattled their teeth. The human brain could not process the machine in time. Standard German tank training previously demanded 16 grueling weeks. Soldiers learned every single gear, but the military was bleeding time. Instructors gave these recruits mere days of rushed practice. Most had only ever driven the older, vastly simpler Panzer IV. They fired a handful of live shells at the Grafenwohr proving grounds. Then officers immediately loaded them onto eastbound trains. Command handed them the most complex, fragile weapon on the battlefield. Yet to protect state secrets, High Command strictly forbade the tankers from writing down a single operating instruction. They had to memorize their own survival. Blind, terrified, and trailing exhaust smoke, the inexperienced crews pushed the heavy throttles forward. They drove straight toward the entrenched Soviet positions on their first day of combat. This blind march of raw crews met its inevitable end. Deep inside flooded Soviet anti-tank ditches. Where did the rookies' mistakes lead? Straight into a pre-prepared trap. Veterans spotted the water early. They pulled their levers. They turned their heavy machines around. But the novices pushed forward. Broken communication and pure panic dictated their orders. Dozens of massive tanks plunged directly into the mud. They bogged down instantly. Then the real nightmare began. The mud hit explosives. A sprawling minefield snapped shut around them. Detonations crippled 2 entire companies before they fired a single shot. Terrified soldiers abandoned their sinking vehicles under heavy Soviet artillery, leaving the Reich's ultimate weapon to rot in the dirt. By the second day, the slaughter of these crews would rapidly double. But right now, the surviving drivers finally found their target, their very first armor engagement. They expected a modern Soviet threat. Instead, they faced an awkward silhouette, the M3 Lee. The Lend-Lease program shipped these American machines across the ocean. Commanders knew the design was hopelessly obsolete, a tall, clumsy metal box. German gunners quickly burned 6 of them, forcing the rest to flee across the shattered steppe. But this easy victory masked a humiliating truth. The military spent fortunes developing a technological marvel, only to bleed against outdated export leftovers. The first day cost the division 18 lost Panthers. The next day claimed 37. Out of 200 Panthers lost at Kursk, the enemy barely scratched the majority. 130 machines simply broke down before ever seeing the target. A friendly Panzer IV obliterated another in the blinding dust. But the ultimate psychological shock for the surviving crews did not come from mechanical failures. It came from the infantry. A sharp, deafening ring of metal shatters the engine noise. A 14.5mm bullet effortlessly punches through the unsloped side. White-hot sparks flood the cramped fighting compartment. The crew panics. Smoke blinds the men. The commander screams. The gunner fights the controls, desperately trying to traverse the overweight turret. The gears groan. It drags. The massive gun cannot swing around in time. The Soviet anti-tank rifle cost thousands of times less than the German technological marvel. Yet it slaughtered the men inside with terrifying ease. The engineers left a fatal blind spot. The lower hull, directly above the road wheels, lacked any protective angle. No sloping, no deflection, just vertical steel waiting for a strike. Hitler personally demanded an impenetrable front, sacrificing the flanks to save weight. This rigid priority created a severely unbalanced weapon. The machine survived heavy head-on hits, But the colossal weight of the reinforced nose ruined the physical geometry. The thick frontal plate shifted the entire center of gravity drastically forward. Crews bolted on metal side skirts to shield the thin armor, but they could never replace the weak transmission buried deep inside the heavy hull. How long did this vital system survive under a rookie driver? Exactly 100 meters. The final drive transferred engine rotation directly to the track wheels. Engineers originally designed and tested this delicate mechanism for a completely different vehicle, strictly calculating the load limits for a much lighter chassis. The straight-cut gears could safely move 30 tons, but a combat-ready Panther weighed over 50 tons. The factory knew the physics. They ignored them. To meet desperate wartime quotas, German producers authorized cheaper, softer steel for the most critical internal components. Commanders forced young crews into machines doomed to die right on the assembly line. A terrified recruit dropped the clutch. The fragile mechanism took the entire colossal shock. A loud, agonizing grind of snapping gear teeth echoed through the cramped cabin. The steel sheared apart under the unbearable weight. The machine just froze.